Welcome to the final round of the second annual International Mock Trial Alumni Flash Trial Contest. This is an amazing format that was inspired by the UC Berkeley Flash Trial Tournament, as well as Top Gun Trial by Combat, Gladiator, all of these formats where you have a really compressed amount of time to put together a fantastic case. We began with 18 teams. We are now down to the top two. So, we're going to begin with our esteemed judging panel. Let's start with Judge Bryan Page Arredondo. Any message that you have for the team?
Hi, I'm Bryan Page. I'm a high school competitor here in Texas, and honestly, just good luck. I've seen a lot of great things throughout this tournament, and I expect to see a lot more great things.
Thank you so much, Bryan. Judge Jacob Doe.
Hey guys, I'm a high school competitor, one of the Casewriters, and I know that each team here has a completely equal chance of winning this round, and I hope to have I hope you guys have a lot of fun with this, and one of you guys takes home the trophy.
Judge Manty Ma.
Hi everyone, I'm a high school competitor on the Modern Brain Mock Trial team, and my message is just good luck and have fun.
Judge and case writer Ethan Phung.
Hi, my name is Ethan Phung. I'm actually a middle school competitor, and I'm really excited to see everyone compete in my case today.
And one of the most outstanding judges we've had with 5 nominations, Judge Naomi Meyer.
Hi guys, I'm Naomi. I'm the incoming captain of the Amherst College mock trial team. Given all of the skill that I've seen in the rounds that I've judged so far, you guys must be really incredible to be the finalists. Just do me a favor, take a breath. Everything's gonna be okay. You won't do any better if you're too nervous or too heated. So just make sure to stay calm.
Okay, let's make it happen. Now calling the case. Could I please get appearances, starting with Plaintiff?
Of course. Good afternoon, Judge Lampert. I'm Jonathan Fredericks, and today I'm here on behalf of the plaintiff, the Supernova Air Show.
Defense?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Alexandra Stanton, and I'm here on behalf of the defendant, Kacy Howard.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon to all. Any housekeeping from Plaintiff?
Just two things for us, Your Honor. First of all, when we're screen sharing exhibits, would you like us to ask permission first or just state what we're doing?
Just state what you're doing.
Understood. We'd also like to invoke Rule 615, the constructive sequestration of witnesses, barring party representatives. The plaintiff, we don't have a party representative today.
Defense, do you?
Apologies, Your Honor. Yes, we do. It's the defendant, Kacy Howard.
Okay, it's invoked.
And with that, the Supernova Air Show is ready for trial.
Okay. Defense, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. We'd just like the court to take judicial notice of Stipulation 5. This covers that the custodian of this document, Naomi Wright, isn't required to be at trial in order to authenticate it. It's a self-authenticating exhibit.
Any comment on that, Plaintiff?
That's our understanding as well, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything else from the defense?
Nothing else, Your Honor. Kacy Howard's ready for trial.
Okay. Let's do it. Opening statements, please.
May it please the court. The defendant wanted a show, so she didn't fly safe. It's August 17th of last year, and stunt pilot Kacy Howard's getting ready to do the thing she loves most. Put on a good show. So as she walks towards her plane and hears the crowd cheering behind her, adrenaline starts pumping. As she steps into the cockpit and puts on her helmet, she can hear her heart beating in her chest. She takes off. She wants to put on a good show, so she flies higher and higher. She sees the crowd cheering down below, so she flies higher and higher, and because safety is not on her mind, she flies higher and higher and higher until her plane, it can't take it anymore. Falls to the ground. Members of the jury, we're lucky that the only thing lost that day was that plane. The fact is, Kacy Howard, she still has to take accountability for the damage she caused. Because she wanted a show. So she didn't fly safe. That's why the Supernova Air Show, the person who lent her that plane for that show, brought a claim of negligence against the defendant. I want to spend a minute explaining what that means. We took on a burden when we brought that claim. We had to prove a few things to you. First, that the defendant had a duty to act reasonably when flying that plane. That she broke that duty. And that's why the plane crashed. And because this is a civil case, we don't have to answer every question, answer every doubt for you, no. We just have to convince you of that by a preponderance of the evidence, just a tip of the scales. We're going to meet that burden today. And to show you how we're going to meet that burden, I'm going to ask you to remember 3 facts. First, that the defendant was given instructions. Second, she ignored those instructions. And third, that's why the plane crashed. So let's start with that first fact, that the defendant was given instructions. You'll actually get to hear from Billy Santos. He's the man that runs this show. He'll tell you that the planes they have, they're not brand new fighter jets, not 737s, no. They're antique planes. So because of their age, they have to be flown a specific way. He'll tell you there's certain tricks that are just off limits. And he'll explain to you how that's exactly what he told the defendant. But that brings us to our second fact, that the defendant, Kacy Howard, she ignored those warnings. When Miss Howard takes the stand, she'll have to admit that she did tricks that weren't approved, flying faster and higher than anyone told her would be okay. What happened next? Well, that's our third fact, that the plane she was flying, it crashed. And we'll be able to show you that that crash, it was directly caused by her reckless flying. Because you'll learn Miss Howard, she wasn't the only pilot flying that day. Hers wasn't the only plane in the air. But after she flew the way she did, you'll learn that her plane was the only one to go down. Members of the jury, we get it. Entertainers, stunt pilots, they want to put on a good show. They want to take on risk, do things that are daring. But the fact is that no amount of risk, no amount of entertainment is worth putting yourself, others, and other people's property at risk. But you'll learn that's what the defendant did. Because she wanted a show. So she just didn't fly safe. So at the end of today's trial, I'm going to ask you to find the defendant liable. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Defense, please.
May it please the court. They put a pilot in a broken plane. Mr. Fredericks just got up here and told you about August 17th, a day where Supernova Air Show's biggest show yet was supposed to take place. There were families with picnic blankets laid out on the beach, people in lawn chairs, children on their parents' shoulders. one of the planes was flying throughout the sky, started slowing down, started shaking, and eventually crashed. Mr. Fredericks told you a lot about that pilot, Kacy Howard. But what he didn't tell you, what you haven't heard yet, is that that pilot was put in a broken plane. What you haven't heard yet, what Mr. Fredericks didn't tell you, is that there was a maintenance log that showed electrical damage to the plane's instruments identified months before and never fixed. What you didn't hear is that there was propeller rust that was ignored. What you didn't hear is that hours before Miss Howard's plane was supposed to take off, they were taping up the wing with duct tape. What you haven't heard about is a promise made directly to Miss Howard that the plane would be fixed before the show. A promise that wasn't kept. You've heard about a plane crash, but what you haven't heard about until right now is the condition of the plane that crashed. That's what this case is actually about. The pilot of the plane, Kacy Howard, had no way of knowing that she would be sent to fly in a plane that was already broken. We're here today because Supernova Air Show brought a claim of negligence against my client, Kacy Howard. And now when they brought this claim, they took on a burden of proof. This means that it was their job to prove to you, and their job only, to prove that by a preponderance of the evidence, Miss Howard is liable for negligence. That means they have to prove three things to you. Number one, Miss Howard had a duty to act using reasonable care. That's one we can all agree on. But the question here is about the last 2 points. Number two. Whether or not Miss Howard breached that duty, and whether or not that breach was the proximate cause of the damage that was done. Today we're going to show you that it's not more likely than not that it was Miss Howard who breached that duty. We're going to ask you to follow 3 facts throughout today's trial that will show you that. 1, the plane was damaged. 2, the air show knew it was damaged. And 3, it was the damage and not Miss Howard that caused the plane to crash. I want to walk through each of those 3 points. First, the plane was damaged. You're going to get to see the air show's own maintenance log, the documentation, their mechanic's signature that says this 34-year-old plane had electrical damage that was never addressed, that the wing of that plane was taped the day of the fly. Members of the jury, that's not a hidden secret that we dug up. It's what Supernova wrote down themselves. It's what that operations overseer that Mr. Fredericks just said you'd hear from knew about before he sent Miss Howard up in the sky to crash. Second, the air show knew it was damaged. You'll get to see on that maintenance log that they logged every single problem, that they saw the tape coming off the wings, that they knew that those electrical wires wouldn't work, but their operations manager personally promised Miss Howard that the plane would be fixed. But they put her in that plane anyway. The last thing we'll prove is that the damage caused the plane to crash. The electrical damage that was identified months before the plane took off was never fixed. We're going to prove to you that Miss Howard, she didn't know about that damage. But the air show did. We're going to show you that Miss Howard didn't break a single rule while she was driving that plane. It was already destined to crash. We'll use those 3 points to show you how they put a pilot in a broken plane. Members of the jury, on August 17th, Supernova Air Show. They weren't just putting a pilot in danger, they were putting the families, the overseers watching below in danger too. Supernova Air Show had a duty to make sure the people that they were putting on planes and the people that were watching below were safe. Something they didn't do. Thank goodness no one is hurt. Thank goodness Miss Howard survived the crash. But those rules are put in place to protect people on the ground and the pilot in the plane from being injured. And when you put someone in a broken plane, safety's not guaranteed. That's why after hearing all the evidence today, you'll see that it wasn't Miss Howard that was acting negligently. It was Supernova Air Show. We'll ask you to follow those 3 facts, and once you hear all the evidence, it'll be easy to see that Miss Howard is not liable for negligence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Plaintiff, please call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Billy Santos to the stand. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Santos. Could you introduce yourself to our jury?
Of course. Good afternoon. My name is Billy Santos. It's nice to meet you.
What do you do for a living, sir?
Well, I run an air show here in town with a bunch of planes in the sky. It's called Supernova Air Show.
How'd you get into aviation?
Oh, like my dad, he was in the Air Force. Used to let me sit on the tarmac sometimes as a kid, watch the planes take off. I've seen them fly a few times. I've also been to the air show before. When I was a little kid and seeing those planes fly, I knew it was what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
Could you tell us a little bit more about Supernova Air Show for those of us who might not have seen it before?
Yeah, of course. Supernova is special. A lot of air shows, they'll have fighter planes, they'll have stuff shooting fireworks everywhere. But Supernova, it has a lot of older models. The planes have been the same since I was a kid. They're antiques. They're things for, people who love planes like myself to watch.
We'll talk about some of those antique planes in a minute. But first, do you know somebody named Kacy Howard?
Yes, sir. Yes, I do. She was one of the pilots at Supernova, and she was involved in a plane crash at our most recent show.
Sir, did your company lose any money after that plane crash?
Yes, sir. We did. We lost thousands of dollars after that happened.
Let's talk about how it happened. Sir, you mentioned that Supernova, they're antique planes. Does that change at all how they're supposed to be flown?
Yeah. There's a lot more rules and regulations when things are older, right? You have to make sure that you're flying them a little bit more careful. We still have fun tricks and stunts, but there's some regulations.
Are those regulations written down anywhere?
Yes, sir. We make sure that we write down all the rules, and then I also talk to the pilots beforehand.
Your Honor, at this point, we'll be screen sharing Exhibit 2B. Sir, could you tell us what Exhibit 2B is?
Yeah. This is a list of some of the rules and regulations that we give the pilots before they fly.
Is Exhibit 2B a true and correct copy of those rules?
Yes, it is.
The plaintiff offers Exhibit 2B into evidence.
Any objections to 2B?
No objections.
Received.
So, Mr. Santos, could you walk us through what's here on this exhibit?
Yeah, of course. So what we have here for rules and requirements, our sort of restrictions, it's actually right there at the bottom. We have rules about how high you can fly. These planes, they can't hit a certain altitude, or how low you can come to the ground. You don't want to risk hitting anything that's going to be sticking up out of there like a tree or a pole. We also have some regulations about the pitch, the angle that you can fly, and how fast you can go.
I want to focus in on one of those that you just mentioned, the pitch. Could you explain what pitch is?
Yeah. Pitch is kind of a term of art in the business. Essentially, all it means is the angle at which your plane is flying, up from the ground.
And what is the pitch requirement that was given for August 17th?
Yeah, it's written right there at the paper. It's about 60 degrees is the pitch requirement. That just means you can't bring your plane above a 60-degree angle.
Well, if that was the instruction you gave pilots, I want to talk about whether or not the defendant followed that instruction. Did you ever get a chance to talk to her one-on-one about the rules?
Yes, sir. I did. All the pilots, they come in for a pre-flight sort of conference. It's like an interview with me.
How did that conversation go?
It was pretty standard at first, but then she started asking all these crazy tricks, a double loops or a Cuban eight. That's just like a big figure eight in the sky, but you're going really fast while you're doing it. And I told her that sort of stuff, it's probably not going to happen.
Did she follow up with you after that, saying, I'd really like to do these tricks, can I?
No, no, I just let her know that those tricks, they were off limits.
Well, if you told her that those tricks would be off limits, let's talk about the day of. Sir, I want to clear something up. Do you know the specific plane that Miss Howard was flying?
Yes, yes, sir, I do. I'd recognize the plane.
At this point, we'll be screen sharing Exhibit 1. Sir, could you tell us what Exhibit 1 is?
Yeah, Exhibit 1 is the plane that she was flying at the time.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of that plane?
Yes, sir. It's a Sukhoi Su-26M written right there on the side.
Plaintiff offers Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objections to one?
No objections.
Proceed.
I want to see if you put Miss Howard in a broken plane. Do you ever do maintenance on these planes?
Yes, sir. Regularly and before every show.
So when was the last time you did maintenance on Miss Howard's plane?
Well, we did maintenance on every single plane, including this one, the day of that air show.
What did the maintenance report show that day?
Well, it showed that we had an issue with the wing. So what we did was we applied some standard adhesive to the side of that wing. I know it looks a little bit like tape. It looks like duct tape, but it's standard practice. It's an adhesive that we use to keep these planes intact. Like I mentioned, they're older models, they're antiques. These are things that we're trying to preserve. We can't just be pulling things in and out willy-nilly.
So if that repair was standard practice, let's talk about what happened when the plane got in the air. Were you watching Miss Howard when she took off?
Yes, sir, I was.
What did you see her do?
I saw those same tricks that I told her she couldn't do. I saw the loops, I saw the Cuban eight and everything, and she made it through those. I was just thinking, thank God nobody got hurt, but she's got to stop. And I thought she was going to, but then she came up to the last trick.
What did you see her do then?
It was this crazy maneuver. She came all the way down and shot back up, straight up in the air, straight vertical. And what do you know? That's what happens to the plane. It stalls out. The plane started falling out of the sky.
Sir, based on the instructions you gave the defendant, was she allowed to fly straight up in the air?
No, she wasn't. That could have hurt people. We have families here, kids here. I was a kid going to this show. I was scared. We got real lucky.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Santos.
Good afternoon. How you doing today?
Good. I want to talk a little bit about what you just mentioned with Mr. Fredericks.
Okay.
You said you perform maintenance on every plane before it goes off in the air, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to be clear what you meant by that for the members of the jury. Sir, you were performing maintenance on Miss Howard's plane the day of the air show, right?
Yes, ma'am. That's standard.
3 hours before the air show.
You're correct. That's right.
Sir, what's not standard It's the fact that you found out there was something wrong with Miss Howard's plane, right?
Oh, no, that can happen with these older models. It's just important that we address them as soon as we see the problem.
Sir, I want to be clear. There was one plane that had a damaged wing, right?
That's true.
That was Miss Howard's plane.
That's correct.
You taped it up 3 hours before she went in the air.
Yes, ma'am. Standard practice. We applied that adhesive. We made sure the plane was good to fly.
But it wasn't just the damaged wing. You also tried to fix the other parts, in your own words, as best as you could, right?
Yes, ma'am. We made sure we fixed the plane up so that if you're following the regulations, everything should be okay.
Sir, you keep saying we, but I want to be clear. You're not a mechanic, right?
Oh, no, ma'am. You're right. I just run the show. We got a team of people who do that.
Sorry, you have a PhD in business administration, don't you?
I'm getting there. I'm not quite Dr. Santos yet, but I'll let you know when I am.
Sir, you're not the person who repairs the planes.
No,
What you do is you oversee the operations, right?
that's correct.
You described this air show as the biggest air show in the country. Did I get that right?
Yes, ma'am. It's very big.
And you admit that these planes, well, they're a bit old, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
You know that Miss Howard's plane, it was 34 years old, right?
Yeah, like I said, these are antiques. They're not your Boeing 737s. They're the kind with the propeller on the front.
And when you're looking at each of these antiques, you're sure to keep a maintenance log of all issues that could go wrong with these planes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You're aware of those maintenance logs, specifically for Miss Howard's plane, right?
Yes, I am.
Would you recognize it if I showed it to you?
I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'll be screen sharing Exhibit 3, the maintenance log. And Mr. Santos, Exhibit 3 is the aircraft maintenance log for Miss Howard's plane, right?
Yes, that's right.
And you see that it's Naomi Wright that was the mechanic working under this plane?
That's correct.
Exhibit 3 looks like a true and correct copy of the maintenance log.
It appears to be to me.
It doesn't seem like it's been changed or altered since the last time you saw it.
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, defense offers Exhibit 3.
Any objections to 3?
Yes, Your Honor, to improper character evidence under Rule 404, if I may explain.
Please.
This maintenance log includes entries from as far back as over a month before the actual crash and the specific maintenance that was done on those previous instances. We're worried that the jury will take those previous maintenance that might have been done carelessly as preponderance, or excuse me, as propensity, that on the day of the actual crash, Naomi Wright, that maintenance person, similarly acted carelessly.
Response to 404?
Your Honor, these are not two isolated incidences. This entire maintenance log covers the exact same plane. The fact that the plane was not fixed in July and it was never addressed, it's being used not for preponderance. It's the same scenario, the same plane, the same mechanic who didn't fix it.
Okay, so to be clear, plaintiff is saying this is going to propensity. You're saying it's not going to propensity because this person has been doing it so consistently?
Your Honor, these are not two separate circumstances. We're not using this to show that because someone acted in one way once, they're using it to act again for propensity purposes. What we're using this for here is this is the same circumstance. This is the same plane that was worked on by the same person.
Okay. Response, plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. The issue in today's case is the state of the plane when it took off on August 17th. The only thing on this exhibit that's relevant to that is what the maintenance check that was done that day found. Any issues. That's why we had no issues with opposing counsel asking Mr. Santos about the maintenance check that day. But to ask about what was done or what wasn't done months before, that's only going to prove propensity on the kind of work that this mechanic does.
Permission to respond on that, Your Honor?
Yes, and then I'm going to make a ruling.
Yes, Your Honor. We're not using this for a character trait. It goes to an element of causation. This goes to the state of the plane itself, the fact that it was broken. We're not using this to offer a character trait.
Okay, I'm prepared to rule. I agree that if this was going to a character trait of carelessness, for example, then that might be a propensity concern. It's not clear to me that propensity is not in the picture just because it happened more than one time. There's not a fine line about habit versus propensity that's been delineated here. However, with that good faith offer that this is not going to any character trait, rather just the state of the plane, I'm okay with the limiting instruction using that exact language. And barring any mention that this could be for propensity, that's my ruling. Please proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Santos, I want to walk through this maintenance log. And just so we're clear for the members of the jury, all of these logs have to do with Miss Howard's plane that she flew, right?
Yes, that's right. That's previous maintenance work that we did on the same plane.
Sir, I want to talk about this very first date here. Do you see where it says 7-2 up there at the top?
Yes, July 2nd.
And if we go over there and we see component, it says electrical wiring and connections, right?
Yes, that was an issue we were having back in July. That's not an issue that we noted on the day of.
Let's see whether or not your mechanic agrees. And Naomi Wright wrote, performed inspection of electrical wiring and connections, found damages on wires connecting to instrument readings and aircraft functions. Have not addressed this issue. Will follow up and or fix issue in the next inspection. I read that right, correct?
Yes, you read that.
Sir, nowhere on this entire maintenance log does it say this issue was addressed.
No, ma'am. It just doesn't note the issue in the later weeks. It wasn't an issue that came up again.
Sir, this issue was not followed up on in any of these next maintenance logs, right?
Well, you're right. We don't write it out there. It's just not an issue that came up again.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. You can stop sharing Exhibit 3. Mr. Santos, I want to talk about something that Mr. Fredericks mentioned earlier. She said that Miss Howard likes to put on a good show.
I would say so.
Sir, you talked to Miss Howard before she went in that plane, didn't you?
I did, yes.
You said you wanted to make sure that we were using the air show planes? Because you had to show it off, right?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we do at the air show. You show off the plane. It's what people come to see.
Show it off. Those are your words, not Miss Howard's.
Yes, ma'am. I said that.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Nothing further at this time.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Santos, opposing counsel asked you about some electrical issues from back in July. From looking at that maintenance report, were those issues ever identified again?
No, sir. They weren't logged in any of the weeks, and especially not on the day of.
And Miss Stanton just asked you about how you told Miss Howard to show the plane off. Sir, when you told her that, did you say show that plane off by breaking every rule I've given you?
No, of course not, sir.
Did you ever give her permission to break any of those rules?
No. Look, we want to put on a good show, but we only do it if it's going to be safe.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santos. You may step down.
Thank you.
And with that, the plaintiff rests our case in chief.
Okay. Defense?
The defense calls Kacy Howard. Good afternoon. Can you introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi there, my name is Kacy Howard.
What do you do for a living, Miss Howard?
I'm a stunt pilot. Been doing that for the last 15 years.
How long have you been a stunt pilot for?
For the past 15 years, for quite a while.
Excuse me, how'd you become a stunt pilot?
Well, started way back when I was a kid. Growing up, my dad's favorite movie was Top Gun, so, we watched that millions of times probably. I would just sit in my living room and he'd play that basically every week. Seeing those pilots fly, I just thought, gosh, if I could do that myself one day, that would be incredible. So that's how I got into that field.
Did you end up having any education or training that got you to be able to fly planes like that?
I did. I got a bachelor's degree in aviation from Bryan University, and I've been flying for about 15 years and did a lot of training before that too.
You mentioned you were the operations overseer at Supernova. How'd you become involved with that air show?
I flew for them for the first time in August of 2024. It was my first major job, and then I got invited back for the air show in 2025. So I've been working for that air show for the past 2 years.
Miss Santos, did you ever talk to Miss Howard during that air show?
I did. I was invited back to the air show for the 2025 air show, and they asked me to fly one of Supernova's flagship planes, which was different since the past year I'd flown my own plane.
Excuse me, Miss Howard. What happened after you were invited back?
Well, I was skeptical of flying one of their planes because I remember in the previous year I'd seen the condition of their planes, and I
Objection,
wouldn't
Your
want to
Honor.
fly.
At this point, to Rule 404, that Miss Howard is testifying about a previous year about different planes, the specific care and maintenance that was done with those.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor, we're not using this for propensity purposes. Instead, we're using it to show the motive of Miss Howard. That once she understood this information and that she became skeptical, it caused her to ask more questions leading up to the air show that she flew in.
Give me a further offer of proof. After she asked those questions, what happened?
Your Honor, after she asked those questions, she proceeded to go to a safety briefing, talk to a mechanic, ask more questions, and eventually she was ignored about them.
Okay, response on motive?
Yes, Your Honor. This foundation about what happened a year ago isn't necessary. Opposing counsel can just ask the question about what questions you might have asked Mr. Santos this year. We're worried that this will be taken for propensity, that because the planes were maintained poorly last year, they were similarly maintained poorly this year.
I'm going to give the jury a second limiting instruction. Please proceed.
Ma'am, you just mentioned that you were skeptical. Did you share that concern with anyone in the air show?
I did. When they told me they wanted to fly one of their planes, I asked them about it, and I asked them about the maintenance of their planes, and this guy named Billy, who I think runs the place or something, he said that the planes would be fixed by the time the air show came around. So that's what I figured would happen.
Did you specifically ask about performing any certain stunts while you were in the air?
I did. I do this signature move that I've been doing for a while called a Cuban 8. It's basically like an 8, an infinity in the sky. And I asked Mr. Santos if doing that would be possible, and he said probably not. So it was unclear what he meant.
Miss Howard, to be clear, did you ever end up doing a full Cuban 8 in the sky?
No, I never did. I ended up doing a modified Cuban 8 because doing a full one would have broken the rules, and I didn't do that.
After you had that call with Mr. Santos, did he ever send you any more additional information about the state of the plane?
No, he never followed up with me, assured me that the planes were in safe condition to fly, and I asked on the day of, but I was ignored.
I want to move on to the day that you got in that plane. What time did you arrive at the airstrip?
I got there bright and early. These things, they don't give you much sleep. I got there around 6 a.m.
And what'd you do whenever you got to the plane?
Well, I saw the mechanic, and the mechanic Naomi. She told me that she had to make some urgent repairs, which was a bit concerning to me, considering I was about to fly that plane just that morning.
What did you say after she said they needed urgent repairs on their plane?
Well, I asked her if the plane would be, fit to fly after the repairs.
Did she respond to you?
She ignored me, so I didn't hear back about that.
Miss Howard, do you know when the mechanic finished working on your plane?
9:30, she worked on it for a while. I figured she was doing her job and that she did it fine, so by the time I was ready to fly, I trusted that they'd repaired it.
Would you recognize a photo of the plane that you flew on August 17th if I showed it to you?
I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect will be screen sharing Exhibit 1. Ms. Howard, I'm showing you Exhibit 1. Do you recognize this?
I do. That's the plane that I flew that day. Yeah, it's a Suki SU-26M.
Ms. Howard, what'd you notice about the condition of that plane?
Well, I mean, just looking at it, you can tell. There's chipped paint. There's duct tape on the plane, rust. It's an old plane. It had been in service since 1991.
After the mechanic finished on that plane, did anyone come talk to you before you got in and strapped your seatbelt on?
Mr. Santos came over. He asked how I was feeling, and, I said I was nervous but excited, and, I trusted that everything would go fine, and I was excited to put on the best show that I could.
After you said you were nervous, how do you respond to that?
He told me to show off the plane for everyone to see.
So when you got in that plane and started the engine, what happened?
It made some unusual noises, but it stabilized eventually, so I didn't think anything much of it at first.
Did you ever consider that you shouldn't fly the plane?
I mean, by that point, there were thousands of people there, spectators who paid so much money to see me fly. Santos had just told me to show the plane off. I trusted that everything would be fine, and no, I didn't consider that.
Ma'am, during opening statements, Mr. Fredericks mentioned there was a safety briefing before you got in the plane. Were you there?
I was. There were actually 2 safety briefings. There was one the day before I went up in the plane and one the morning of.
Were you fully paying attention during those briefings?
The day before, I'll admit, I was tired. I'd just been training all morning. I was not paying attention a whole lot to that briefing, but the next one, it was different. I was locked in. It was the same material as the stuff before.
Did they ever show you any rules to follow while you were flying that plane?
They did. We have this thing called Notice to Airmen. It's something that we all have to comply by to make sure that the flight goes safely. And I looked at that, and I made sure that I complied with that as best as I could.
Would you recognize a copy of those rules if I showed them to you?
Certainly would. I've seen them too many times to count.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'll be screen sharing the Notice to Airmen. Ma'am, right here in the bottom section of these rules, do you see all the limits of the speed and the altitude you're allowed to fly at?
I certainly do, ma'am.
Did you break any of the rules listed in this NOTAM?
I never exceeded the speed limit. I never exceeded the bank angle limit of 75 degrees, and never flew closer to the ground than 1,250 feet. I was around 250 feet. I might have been a bit lower, but I wasn't closely monitoring everything. I was trying to stay my best within the rules, but no, I didn't break any of those rules.
During the flight, did you see any warnings in the cockpit?
I did. I saw some warnings on the control, but, I didn't really think much of them at the time.
And did you do any tricks while you were in the air?
I did. I did a modified Cuban 8 and a modified hammerhead, which is this trick that's a 90-degree thing. It's real fun.
After you did those tricks, what happened?
Started to climb real steeply, and my speed decreased, and all of a sudden felt that something was wrong, and I lost control of the plane.
What do you mean you lost control of the plane?
I mean, the stick, which is what we used to bring the plane up, it wasn't responding. The plane just kept shaking and shaking no matter what I did to it, so there was just nothing I can do.
What happened after you lost control of the plane?
The plane was about to hit the water. And I had seconds, so I ejected. And it was not good after I was rushed to the hospital, but luckily I recovered.
Thank you, Miss Howard. Your Honor, nothing further at this time.
Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Howard, I want to make sure we understand what your job is and what it isn't. All right?
Sounds good, sir.
Because Miss Howard, you are not a mechanic. True?
No, sir, am not. I'm just a pilot.
You have not gone to mechanic school.
That's true. I just have my bachelor's in aviation.
Don't have an engineering degree.
No, sir.
So it's fair to say you don't have the experience to look at a plane and identify mechanical issues.
Not specific mechanical issues, but beyond what I could see from the eye, you're right.
So if you're not a mechanic, let's talk about what your job actually is. You're a stunt performer.
I am.
You said you were a stunt performer ever since you saw Top Gun when you were a kid.
Yeah, I was. That was when it all started.
And after you saw Tom Cruise on the big screen, it's fair to say, in your job, you like to put on a show too.
Of course I do. That's what I do as a stunt pilot, and that's why I got in the business.
Putting on a good show, sometimes that means taking on risks.
Sometimes it does, but of course those risks gotta be in the safety limitations always.
You beat me to it, Miss Howard. That's exactly right. Any risk that you take on, you have to do it safely.
Of course, that's one of the first things that we learn, being a stunt pilot. It certainly means we're going to take risks, but that's why we're given a lot of rules to follow, and we make sure we follow them.
And at Supernova Air Show, you were given a lot of rules there too, right?
I was, like I always am before any kind of air show.
Let's talk about the specific instructions you were given. Because, like you said, those instructions, they actually came the day before the flight, right?
That's right. We had a safety briefing the day before, and I wasn't paying much attention to that one, but we had another one the next morning.
We'll get there in a minute, but it's true that Supernova Air Show, the day before, sat down with all the pilots, right?
That's right, sir.
They walked you step by step through those instructions.
That's right. They did the same thing the next day.
Ma'am, the day before, you'd say you weren't even paying attention to those instructions.
That's right, sir. Like I said, I had a busy morning, but I made sure the day of my actual flight, I was locked in on those rules, and I was.
So because you had a busy morning and ignored those instructions that day, let's talk about the next day. Because again, they went over those same instructions.
Yes, sir, they did.
For a second time, they walked you step by step through what to do.
Yes, they did.
I want the jury to get to see those again. I'll be screen sharing Exhibit 2B once again. Ms. Howard, Exhibit 2B, those are those instructions that they walked you through 2 whole times.
That's right, and right before I made sure I looked through them carefully.
You said on direct examination, you tried to follow those to the best of your ability.
Absolutely, that's the best we can do as stunt pilots, and I, with my training, I did the best I could to follow the rules.
But ma'am, you admitted yourself, you weren't closely monitoring all your speed and angles, right?
I was certainly trying to, the best I could, but the speed and angles, I wasn't necessarily, reading all the details on the barometer as best as I could. I tried my best.
Let's see if you really did your best, ma'am, because point D, that's about the pitch you're allowed to take, right?
That's right.
That's how steep the angle of your plane is, right?
That's right.
The instruction you were given twice is that you couldn't go any steeper than 60 degrees.
That's exactly right, sir. And that's why I didn't. That's why I made sure when I did my Cuban 8 and my hammerhead, I was modifying them so they didn't exceed any kind of pitch limits. And that's exactly what I did, sir.
I understand you're saying they were modified, but it's true. One of the tricks you did, it's called the hammerhead, right?
That's right, sir. That's another trick I did that I also modified to make sure I was staying within the rules.
We'll talk about whether or not you actually modified it in a minute, but the hammerhead itself, that's a trick that goes 90 degrees straight up in the air.
That's right. That's why I modified it. I didn't end up doing it that way.
Miss Howard, you were here when Mr. Santos testified, right?
I was.
You heard him say he watched you fly straight up in the air.
That's what he saw, sir, but I can tell you, if I would have done that, that would have been unacceptable. I did not do that. I modified the hammerhead so I could put on a show like he asked me to and stay safe as well.
You're saying you're sure you followed that rule, but also you weren't monitoring it very closely, right?
I was doing the best I could, sir.
I want to make one thing very clear, ma'am. You told us you asked Mr. Santos about some of the tricks you did, right?
I did. I asked, could I do a Cuban 8? And he said, it's not super clear what he was saying about that instruction.
That's right. On direct examination, you said his instruction was unclear.
Yeah, it was.
And his words were probably not.
Yeah, it was unclear based on that what he meant. But the day of when he said to put on a show, I tried to do everything I could, put on a show and keep things safe. So I modified the tricks.
So what you're asking the jury to believe is that you thought probably not meant go ahead?
No, sir. I'm saying that it was unclear. I wanted to put on a show like he asked me to the day of, and when he said to do that, I modified the tricks so that they would be safe.
Well, regardless of that Cuban 8, we can agree that you never asked Mr. Santos if you could do a hammerhead.
That's right. I didn't ask about that. That wasn't one of the things that I asked.
And what we can both agree on is that hammerhead, that was the last trick you did before your plane fell to the ground.
That's right, sir. That's when the plane lost control.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Howard, Mr. Fredericks just asked you about a Cuban 8 and a hammerhead. Did you do either of those tricks fully?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I was just trying to balance safety and put it on a show, so I modified them. I wouldn't have never done those full tricks, especially after he told me I probably shouldn't be doing them, so I modified them, and I had no idea that things would end up that way.
Ms. Howard, I'm remembering back to the beginning of our conversation here today, when you told me you'd been doing this for over a decade. Is anything that you did in that plane on August 17th different from what you'd been doing for the past decade?
No, ma'am. I did everything that I've always done. Every year of my training has taught me to do exactly this.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Nothing further.
Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. Anything further from the defense?
The defense has no further witnesses. We rest our case in chief.
Okay, let's get 2-minute break before we go into closing arguments. And during that time, if we can get the remaining time for closings in the chat. All right, now ready to hear closings, starting with Plaintiff.
May it please the court. The defendant wanted a show, so she just didn't fly safe. Members of the jury, when you go to a stunt show like this one, what do you want to see? I know for me at least, I want to see cool tricks, cool planes, maybe some risk. But at the end of the day, you want to see each and every one of those planes that go up in the air come right back down. Because what we told you today and what Miss Howard couldn't dispute is that no amount of risk, no amount of entertainment is worth putting people's safety at risk. Because the Supernova Air Show, they did want a show. They wanted stunts, they wanted tricks, but they wanted safe ones. But you learned today that wasn't Miss Howard's top priority that day. Because when she wanted a show, she didn't fly safe. That's why we sued her. That's why the Supernova Air Show brought one claim of negligence against the defendant. I explained that to you a little bit at the beginning of today's trial. Let's go over it again. We had to prove to you that Miss Howard, she had a duty to act reasonably when taking care of their plane. We had to prove that she didn't act reasonably. And that's why that plane crashed. Now, Miss Stanton told us at the beginning of today's trial that our job is actually a little bit easier. Because no one can even dispute that Miss Howard, who was flying someone else's plane, had a duty to act reasonably. So the real question that you have to decide today is whether or not she did. Whether or not she did, and did her actions cause that crash? We proved to you more likely than not, they did. And we proved that to you by asking you to follow 3 facts. So I'm going to go over them again. That first fact, that the defendant was given instructions. You actually got to see those instructions for yourself. I mean, plain and simple. It gives step by step by step what's allowed and what isn't. I mean, Miss Howard herself had to admit to you, those rules, they are important. Those rules are the difference between a safe flight and an unsafe one. But we showed you those instructions. She ignored them. That was our second fact. Because as soon as her direct examination, Miss Howard admitted to you what those rules really meant to her. I mean, that first safety meeting, she wasn't even paying attention. But Supernova Air Show cared so much, they gave her a second chance. That next day, again, they walked her through what's allowed and what's not. I mean, Miss Howard, she kept insisting that their instructions, they were a little unclear. Members of the jury, you didn't have to leave your common sense when you came into court today. In what world does probably not mean sure, go ahead, you got the green light? No, that's not reasonable. And the fact is, Supernova Air Show didn't even have the opportunity to tell her no because the defendant, she didn't ask. She admitted that that last trick, the hammerhead, she didn't even bring that up to Mr. Santos at all. And you know why she didn't? It's because that trick is in direct violations of the rules they gave her. She admitted herself. She couldn't go steeper than 60 degrees, but that trick went 90. She tried to tell you she modified that trick today, but that's not what Mr. Santos saw. I mean, you have 2 stories about what happened that day. Let's weigh them against each other. Miss Howard told you she didn't fly 60 degrees, but also she wasn't monitoring it very closely. Mr. Howard was watching his own plane as closely as possible because he was worried about people's safety. Don't you think that it's more likely that he saw what really happened? And there's one fact that proves exactly how the defendant broke those rules. It's our third fact. That after she did that trick, the plane went down. I mean, is it really a coincidence that this plane that apparently was so broken, well, she had been flying it for tricks 1, 2, 3, who knows how many didn't go down, but the one time she does the one that would go wrong, the plane falls right down. And you know that it was a problem with the pilot, not the plane, because she wasn't the only one flying that day. There was pilots upon pilots, planes upon planes, all from Supernova. She was the only one that hit the ground. And members of the jury, we are lucky with what happened that day. Because it wasn't just planes in the air. There were people on the ground. People wanting to have a good time. People trusting that they were going to be safe. But Miss Howard, the defendant, she took that control out of their hands. She decided that giving them a show, giving them risk, that was more important than their safety. Than the safety of another person's property. The law says that's not a decision you get to make. Because when she wanted a show, she decided not to fly safe. So I'm going to ask you to find her liable. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense, please.
May it please the court. They put a pilot in a broken plane. Members of the jury, I want to imagine you've been saving up for a new car. Go to the car dealership. You finally make the payment. You finally get the keys. Get in that car. Drive off the lot. Pressing on the gas. Making a bunch of fun turns. Eventually your foot, it switches from the gas to the brake. Keep on pressing harder on the brake pad. The car's not slowing down. The car has no brakes. That's not your fault. That's the dealership's fault. It wasn't you that was negligent for assuming the dealership would give you a safe car. It was a broken car. That's why it crashed. It's the same exact situation here. Kacy Howard has been flying stunt planes for over a decade. She's not the one who built the plane. She's the one who gets in it, puts on her seatbelt, trusts that it's safe, and takes off into the sky. She had no way of knowing that that 34-year-old rusty, taped-up plane, well, she'd lose control of it while she was in the air. Beginning of this trial, Mr. Fredericks told you he had a burden. He also told you he was going to meet that burden by something called a preponderance of the evidence. He described that as the tip of a scale. Members of the jury, they had to prove 3 things to you today. We know that number 1, it's not something they had to prove. We all agree. Ms. Howard had a duty to act using reasonable care on that plane. The real question is number 2, whether or not she breached that duty. And number 3, if that breach was the proximate cause to the damage of the plane. I want you to remember, proving just number 1, just number 2, that's not enough. He has to prove all 3 more likely than not. And I want to be clear, we don't have a burden in today's case. We don't have a burden to prove to you that Miss Howard wasn't negligent. We don't have to show you that the air show was negligent. The burden lies entirely on the plaintiff. It was their job and their job alone to show you that that broken plane, more likely than not, was a cause of Miss Howard's flying than the fact that it was broken before it even took off. They didn't meet that burden by a preponderance of the evidence. I want to walk through each of the 3 points I told you we'd show you today. That first point, plane was damaged. I mean, let's look at the plane ourselves. You got to see it. You got to see that it was taped up an hour and a half before Miss Howard drove it off. You heard that the show knew about it. You heard that Miss Howard asked the mechanic, hey, is this plane okay? She never got a response. She was ignored. I mean, you can see that it's rusty. You can see that the wing is taped up, and Mr. Santos confirmed that was done 90 minutes before she put on her seatbelt. This is not a plane that was maintained. It was a plane that was patched, it was ignored, and it was put in the air anyway. And we showed you that the plane was damaged. That second point is that the air show knew it was damaged. You saw the maintenance log. Mr. Santos admitted to you that it says that there are wires that are ruining the airplane functions. That issue was not addressed, and nowhere on the rest of this log does it say that those issues were addressed. Mr. Santos told you himself. He called Miss Howard before the show and reassured her, his exact words, the plane would be fixed by the time the air show came around. Members of the jury, Mr. Fredericks could have called the mechanic to the stand, but he didn't. You want to know why? Because he knows Miss Wright would have gotten up here and told each of you that that issue was never addressed, that the airplane could never function. That's why she ignored Miss Howard's question the day she flew that plane. The air show knew that that plane was broken. The air show knew that Miss Howard was going to fly it, and they said nothing. They put her in the air in a broken plane, and that leads us to point 3, that the damage caused the plane to crash. And this is where the heart of this case lies. The air show wants you to treat those warnings as proof of recklessness, as proof that Miss Howard should have landed that plane when she saw those cockpit warnings. The reality is it was already broken before she took off in it. I want you to think about what Miss Howard knew in that moment when she was flying the plane, what she'd been told directly, personally, that this plane, it had been repaired. Miss Howard attributed those warnings to the plane's age, that it might have been old. Mr. Santos' reminder that the plane would be fixed was playing over and over in her mind till it fell into the ocean. I want you to remember back to that maintenance log. When it says there was electrical damage to the aircraft functions, remember back to when it said it wasn't addressed? Remember back to the fact that Mr. Fredericks couldn't answer that question. It's his job to. It was never addressed. Now I want to talk for a moment about what Mr. Fredericks expects you to believe. He expects you to believe that Miss Howard got in that plane, strapped on her seatbelt, took off the tarmac, was flying a plane and doing tricks that she thought would be dangerous. Members of the jury, she was flying the plane. Don't you think a pilot with over a decade of experience wouldn't have put herself in danger? Mr. Fredericks expects you to believe she was acting carelessly and forgetting the fact that if the plane was going to crash, well, she was going to get hurt too. Of course, she was going to intentionally put herself in danger. She didn't know that the plane was broken. Very first words that came out of Mr. Fredericks' mouth at the beginning of this trial is that Miss Howard wanted a show. What Miss Howard wanted is to get in that plane, do the same thing she did with all the other planes she's flown on before. There was one person who said, "Show the plane off," before Miss Howard took off, and it wasn't her. It was Mr. Santos. They sent a pilot in a broken plain. Find Kacy Howard not liable for negligence. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. Members of the jury, I want you to imagine that same car Miss Stanton was just telling you about in her closing. But it's not a brand new Jeep. It's an antique. The dealer, he tells you, we've been doing maintenance, but it's a little bit old. Take it easy. When you decide to drag race that car down the highway and you crash, that's not the dealer's fault, it's yours. Because when Miss Howard, the defendant, chose to put the show over safety, she has to take accountability for the damage she caused. Find her liable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Counsel for both sides, fantastic work. Fantastic final round. You've heard a lot from me, so let's go to our esteemed judging panel. Let's begin with Judge Bryan Page. Let's get a big highlight of the round from your perspective.
Good afternoon, everyone. That was a phenomenal round. And considering who the people are here, I've just got to say, hook 'em horns. And my favorite moment, my favorite moment in the trial, I think, was Jonathan Fredericks in the last pocket. Whenever you started, instead of accelerating, you started decelerating in your motion, in your tone. And like the first part of your cross, you started out, real sweet, real down to earth, real casual, like the Texas trial lawyer style. But then at the end, you got down emotional. And I don't know, it just brought it all home for me.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to Jacob Doe.
Similar things. For the cross on the last question, like it was like such an amazing ending to that cross. Like I pretty much had like a tear of joy in my eye while I was listening to that. It was like so good. And honestly, the witness's answer to that was also good because like that was your most emotional moment this entire trial, and it was just like such a good like combination of like emotion and just like how good of content wise it is.
Let's go to Manty Ma.
I really liked the defendant cross. I thought, especially like the last question, I thought both sides did really good from that. Especially like when the witness kind of like flipped the question by saying, yeah, that was when the plane malfunctioned. I thought it was like really responsive. And yeah, this was a really high level round and everyone was super talented. And it's just really insane how you guys put together this whole case and how polished you were given like the prep time. So good job.
Let's go to Judge Naomi Meyer.
A lot of highlights, but I think for me, the most obvious one would have to be the defense closing. I think I deliver closings, and I think that's one of the most incredible closings I've ever seen, especially the second half of it. So that was really, really impressive. You should be proud of yourself.
Let's go finally, last but not least, to Judge Ethan Phung, who was not only a great judge for this final, but also as an 8th grader wrote this case. I could not have written anything approaching this case as a middle schooler. So special applause to you and your co-writer, Miss Lily Kizirian. Judge Phung, your thoughts.
Thank you so much. I thought this was a really great round. I think everyone stole my comments. I think one part I really loved was the exhibit use. I remember on exhibit 3 where you had the red square around, I believe, the first mechanical issue, and then you brought it back up on closing, which was really good. So props to you. Thank you.
Well, okay, folks, moment you've been waiting for. This is a split decision, as befits a good final round. And it really is incredible, the work that you've done here. For people who aren't familiar with the format, when we say compressed time, we mean that they had 1 hour yesterday to learn this case, then perform it. And then they had an additional 40 minutes from the end of the award ceremony to this trial. I also want to say that the largest margin on any ballot here was a 3-point swing. It was very, very close. Congratulations to both teams, but the winners from UT Austin, the plaintiff, Jonathan Fredericks, Avin French, congratulations. But huge congrats also to the defense. It's Alexandra Stanton and Prisha Mehta. Congratulations. We'll see you next year.
Thank
Great
y'all so
job.
much.
Hook 'em.
Thank you all so much for judging. Thank you for putting this on, Ian.
Hook 'em
Absolutely.
horns.